So we went to Gamescom this year to showcase Pay-Per-Play VR, and as I am really curious about the future of VR gaming, I tried to find as many VR games and innovations as I could. I only had about half a day that I would not need to be at our own booth, so I only found 5 different VR games. And there's a fact that I'm really concerned about, because out of these 5 VR games, 3 gave me motion sickness. Me, an experienced VR developer who's working in the virtual reality for about 2 hours a day. So why is that bad? Just imagine you bought your tickets for a gaming event and want to enjoy your day there. The first booth you see is this really cool VR experience, and you have never tried VR before, so you just give it a shot. But little do you know that it is some unfinished prototype that sometimes runs at 20 FPS, has some bugs and glitches, and it forces you into unexpected rotations or sudden movements from time to time. Maybe you even hold on the entire 5 minutes because you want to enjoy it so badly, but when you finally put off the headset, you feel dizzy. You realize how the game gave you a severe headache, and in the worst case, you even have to throw up afterwards. Just imagine you have to carry around that headache on your first day at Gamescom. So you just swear to yourself to never put on a VR headset ever again.
I fear no man, but that thing, it scares me.
When I was showcasing Pay-Per-Play VR, there were several people who refused to put the headset on.
One shudders to imagine what inhuman thoughts lie behind that mask.
Let me tell you, this is not your fault. VR is not actually that bad anymore. In my honest opinion, this is the fault of some VR developer who just did not care about your well-being enough. I get it that when you publicly showcase your prototype as a developer, there will always be issues and bugs. And people will always forgive you when you tell them that the game is not finished. However, I think that there is a border when you cause literal pain to at least 40% of your players. That is not a problem that you can simply leave unsolved and where you should search for excuses. Of course, there will always be mechanics that have a higher risk of causing motion sickness, as well as there will always be people who have a higher risk of getting motion sickness. But I personally think that our highest premise as VR developers should be to prevent motion sickness, starting with the first prototype of a game. Which leads to 3 sub-problems. The game must always run with at least 60 frames per second, even on low-end devices like the Quest 2. There must be options for all types of locomotion, and gameplay that naturally induces a higher risk of motion sickness needs to be polished in the most careful way. For example, when you have a racing game, you cannot prevent everyone from getting sick, but you can at least reduce bugs and glitches, and that should stand above all. Like the Hippocratic oath for a doctor, we should just swear to never cause harm to any human being. Well, obviously. Otherwise, a lazy VR developer cannot just ruin their own game for a player. In the worst case, they ruin the entire console for that player, which includes my game as well. Like for example, many games have a fluid walking mechanic that can make inexperienced players sick easily. We also got requests to implement it as an alternative to teleportation, so it made me think how I could implement the feature in a way that it would have the lowest possible risk of motion sickness. For me, the answer was to not just start an abrupt movement when the player moves the control stick. I think it is quite interesting to look at the speed curve here. Standing does not give the player motion sickness, and a speed of 1 mile per hour will also not make anyone sick. The crucial part is the change of speed, the acceleration. So we are stretching that part out, slowly accelerating the player towards the maximum speed. And by slow, I mean really slow. It is worth noting that all what I'm talking about here is referring to options, meaning that it highly differs from player to player what they feel comfortable with. Some cannot use fluid locomotion at all, Others need a really slow type of acceleration. Most people prefer a vignette while walking, so that you won't see too much moving environment around you, while others want to straight up perform an unsupervised hyperspace jump every time they touch the stick. And we provide a similar option for speeding the player down, when the collider would bump into a wall. We simply perform a raycast to check whether the player will reach an obstacle and start to slow them down before the bump even happens. For our minigames, I also thought about putting little disclaimers on the games that have a higher risk, so that players can decide on their own whether they want to take the risk of feeling a little dizzy afterwards. And there's one minigame where I will also put a prompt that it is best played while sitting on a chair. I can proudly say that not a single person at Gamescom got motion sickness from Paperplay VR, and I know that because I asked every single one of them. The worst feedback I got was that someone felt a little dizzy after playing Ice Cream Taster, because you have to turn your head around so much. But I am already onto that problem because I care, and I want to keep the risk at a minimum.